It's strange how a single night can split your life into two clean halves, before and after. Before that evening, I was the guy who believed love was something you built through loyalty, sacrifice, and quiet consistency. After that night, I realized love can look you in the eye, hold your hand across the dinner table, and still lie through its teeth. That night was my girlfriend's birthday. The night I paid for everything: dinner, drinks, the venue, even the photographer she wanted. And when I stepped outside for just a moment, just long enough to breathe in the cool air and let my guard down, I saw something that cracked the world I'd built around her. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Her name was Alina. We'd been together for 2 years. She was the kind of woman people noticed, not because she tried to be noticed, but because she carried this effortless confidence, a way of taking up space without asking permission. When we met, I wasn't in a good place. I had just lost my father, and I was trying to keep my small marketing business afloat. I wasn't the guy who smiled easily back then. I was quiet, focused, maybe a little closed off. She was the opposite: loud laughter, wild hair, a chaos that somehow felt alive. She made me feel like there was still color left in the world. And when she looked at me, I felt seen in a way I hadn't felt in years. That kind of attention can feel addictive, especially when you've been walking through silence for too long. We moved fast. Too fast, maybe. Within months, she had a drawer at my place. Her toothbrush sat next to mine. Her perfume clung to the air in my apartment, and her playlists filled my mornings. I told myself that was love, that kind of closeness, that blur between your life and someone else's. Alina had big dreams. She wanted to start a fashion brand, travel, make something of herself. I admired that about her. But somewhere along the way, I became the one financing most of those dreams. It wasn't that she asked directly, it was subtle. The way she'd sigh when her camera broke. The way she'd mention rent being tight that month. The small things that made me want to step in and fix them. So I did. That's who I was, the guy who made sure everything ran smoothly. I paid when we went out. I covered trips. I helped her get new photography equipment when she wanted to build her online portfolio. And at first, I didn't mind. Felt good to be needed. But love is a tricky thing. When one person gives and the other just takes, it doesn't collapse all at once. It erodes, slowly, quietly, until one day you realize you're standing in the ruins. A few weeks before her birthday, she started acting distant. Nothing obvious, just smaller things. Her phone always flipped face down on the table. The way she smiled at messages she didn't explain. The soft, delayed responses when I'd ask about her day. I told myself she was stressed. She was trying to launch her brand. Maybe she just needed space. Still, something in my gut twisted whenever she said she was busy. I've always trusted my instincts, but with her, I ignored them. Because I loved her more than I trusted myself. When her birthday came around, I wanted it to be perfect. She had mentioned a fancy rooftop restaurant downtown, the kind with soft jazz, city lights, and wine glasses that caught the candlelight just right. I booked the entire private dining area for her and her friends. It wasn't cheap, but I didn't care. She deserved it, or at least I thought she did. I spent the day making sure everything was right. The flowers, her favorite white lilies. The cake, imported chocolate with caramel layers. The menu, customized to include her favorite dishes. I wanted that night to remind her of who we were, or maybe to remind myself that we were still okay. She arrived late, of course. Fashionably late, as she called it. When she walked in, every head turned. Her dress was gold, shimmering softly under the lights. She looked radiant, untouchable, almost. She kissed me on the cheek and whispered something about how beautiful everything looked. And for a moment, I forgot every doubt I'd had. The dinner started out perfect. Her friends laughed, glasses clinked, and the night hummed with the kind of joy that feels rehearsed but still intoxicating. She kept her hand on my shoulder, leaned into me when she laughed, and introduced me as the man who made tonight happen. It was supposed to be flattering. It should have been. But there was something hollow in the way she said it, like I was a sponsor, not her boyfriend. I watched her through the night. The way she looked at her phone when she thought I wasn't paying attention. The way one of her friends, a guy named Ray, lingered too close when they took photos together. He was her creative partner, apparently, the one helping her build her brand. I tried not to read into it. I smiled, drank, and played the part of the supportive boyfriend. But the unease never left. Halfway through the evening, I excused myself to take a call. My mother had been unwell, and I wanted to check in with her. I stepped outside, onto the balcony where the city stretched endlessly beneath me. The night air was cold, the kind that stings when you breathe it in too deeply. For a few minutes, I just stood there, watching the traffic flow below. I remember thinking how small everything looked from up there, how distance made chaos seem almost peaceful. When I hung up, I took one more deep breath before turning back toward the restaurant. Through the glass doors, I could see everyone laughing, raising their glasses, completely unaware of me standing outside. And then I saw her, Alina, leaning close to Ray, closer than anyone should lean to someone who isn't their boyfriend. It wasn't a kiss, not yet, but there was an intimacy in that space between them. The kind of look two people share when they've already crossed a line, even if their lips haven't touched. My chest tightened. My first instinct was denial. Maybe it looked worse than it was. Maybe they were just close friends. Maybe she was thanking him. But my gut knew better. I didn't go back inside right away. I stood there, fingers clenched against the railing, the laughter from inside muffled by the glass. The city below kept moving, cars, people, lights. Everything just kept going, like the world didn't care that mine had started to crack. When I finally walked back in, I acted normal. I smiled, laughed, and pretended nothing had happened, because I needed time to understand, time to confirm. I watched her for the rest of the night, the way her eyes followed him, the private smiles, the subtle, unspoken tension between them. It was all there, quiet, but undeniable. When the night ended, I paid the bill, an amount that could have covered a month's rent, and I walked her to the car. She was drunk on attention and champagne. She kissed me on the cheek again, careless and distracted, then asked if I could drop her off at her friend's place where she'd crash for the night. I said yes, because I wanted to see where she really went. But I didn't follow her that night. I didn't need to. I already knew where the story was heading. I just didn't know how far it had gone. When I got home, I sat in silence. The kind of silence that hums, heavy and alive. Her perfume was still on my jacket. Her laughter still echoed in my head. And all I could think was how blind I'd been, how easily I'd mistaken her affection for love, her dependency for closeness. I opened my phone and scrolled through her social media. The birthday posts had already gone up, photos of her smiling beside Ray, tagged captions about partnership and grateful hearts. I wasn't in a single one. That was the night something inside me shifted. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was something quieter. Disappointment, emptiness. A realization that I'd been carrying a relationship that she'd already put down. And as I sat there, alone in the glow of my phone screen, I knew the next few days would tell me everything I needed to know. Whether what I saw was just bad timing, or the truth I'd been avoiding all along. The air outside had turned cold again. I opened the window, letting it fill the room. It smelled like rain, like something was about to break. And deep down, I think I already knew what was coming. The days after her birthday felt like walking through fog. Everything looked normal on the surface. Texts, small talk, routine, but underneath, something had shifted. I could feel it in the pauses between her words, in the way her laughter sounded lighter when she wasn't talking to me. She still messaged me every morning. The same good morning texts, the same emojis. But it felt like she was going through the motions, saying what she thought I wanted to hear. And I responded in kind, pretending nothing had changed. Because pretending at that point was easier than confronting the truth. I started paying attention to details, times, tone, excuses. I noticed how she began canceling plans more often. There was always a reason. A meeting with her creative partner, a late-night edit session, a last-minute client call. Ray's name kept surfacing, always casually, always in context. But it was there, a shadow in every conversation. I told myself I was being paranoid, but the gut feeling never left. It just sat there, quietly pulsing, like a bruise I couldn't stop pressing. Alina had this way of making everything seem like it was for the greater good. If she spent hours with Ray, it was for her career. If she didn't have time for dinner, it was for the project. And if she forgot to reply to my messages for hours, it was just one of those days. I wanted to believe her. God, I really did. I wanted to be the kind of man who trusted his woman fully, who didn't let jealousy poison his mind. But it wasn't jealousy. It was pattern recognition. Because when someone's energy starts leaving you, you can feel it, even if they're still physically there. We went from talking about everything to barely talking about anything that mattered. Conversations used to feel alive, spontaneous. Now they felt rehearsed. I'd ask how her day went, and she'd give me answers that sounded borrowed from someone else's life. She wasn't the woman I met. Or maybe she was, and I was only now seeing her clearly. One evening, she invited me over to her apartment. It had been a while since I'd been there. She said she was too busy, or that it was a mess. But that night, she wanted to have dinner together, just the two of us. It felt like a peace offering, a chance to reset whatever had gone wrong. When I arrived, she looked radiant again, like the Alina I used to know. She wore a simple white shirt, her hair tied back loosely, the kind of look that always felt more intimate than her dressed-up version. She hugged me briefly, almost mechanically, then went back to the stove, stirring something in a pot. The apartment smelled like rosemary and garlic. The lights were dim, soft music playing in the background. Everything should have felt warm, but it didn't. Felt staged. We sat down to eat. She talked about her business plans, the clients she'd met, the future she was building. I nodded, asked questions, smiled when she did. But the more she talked, the more distant I felt. Her life sounded full, but I wasn't in any of it. Then her phone buzzed. A quick glance, a smile that flickered too fast, and the screen turned face down again. I didn't say anything. I just watched the way her fingers lingered on the table, restless, waiting for another message. Later that night, when she went to the kitchen, her phone lit up again. A name I already expected. Ray. I didn't touch it. I just stared at it until the screen dimmed again. That moment, standing there, frozen, pretending not to care, was the quietest kind of humiliation I've ever felt. When she came back, I forced a smile, told her dinner was great, and left earlier than I planned. She didn't ask me to stay. The drive home was long. I didn't play any music. I didn't want noise. I wanted the silence to do its work. That's when the realization started to take root. She wasn't mine anymore. Maybe she hadn't been for a while. But it wasn't the betrayal that hurt most. It was how easily she seemed to move on emotionally. The slow withdrawal, the effortless detachment. Like she'd rehearsed letting go long before I even knew I was being left behind. The next week, she was busier than ever. Texts turned into short replies. Calls went unanswered. She claimed she was traveling for a collaboration shoot. And I, the fool that I was, still offered to drive her to the airport. She refused. Said Ray would pick her up since they were going together. Something about that sentence made my jaw tighten. I kept my face still, though, and wished her luck like a supportive boyfriend would. When she hugged me goodbye, I noticed her perfume had changed. It was new, different, and somehow that small thing, that shift in scent, hurt more than anything else. While she was away, I tried to distract myself with work. I buried myself in projects, meetings, anything that kept me from checking my phone every 5 minutes. But at night, it always caught up to me. The what-ifs, the mental images, the doubts. She posted pictures from her trip, beaches, sunsets, behind-the-scenes photos with her team. Ray was in most of them, sometimes just in the background, sometimes closer than he should have been. Always smiling. There were no pictures of me, not even one. I scrolled through those posts like someone flipping through the end of a story he hadn't realized was already over. When she came back, things were worse. She didn't seem happy to see me. She seemed indifferent. We met for coffee and she talked about her trip, but never about us. She described the sunsets, the hotel, the work, but not once did she mention missing me. I looked at her and realized that somewhere along the way, I had become background noise in her life. Something familiar, something comfortable, but no longer essential. That realization hurt like nothing else. Because I'd built my world around her. And she'd already built hers without me. One night, unable to sleep, I opened her social media again. There was a new post. A picture of her at a restaurant, the same one from her birthday. The caption read, "Back where it all started. Grateful for the people who truly see me." And in the reflection of the glass window behind her, I saw him, Ray, sitting across from her, smiling. That was when the last bit of denial left me. Not anger, just clarity. I stared at that photo for a long time, tracing the faint outlines of the truth I tried to avoid. She had chosen someone else. Maybe emotionally, maybe physically, it didn't even matter anymore. The point was, she was gone. But here's the thing about heartbreak. It doesn't hit all at once. It arrives in small waves. It shows up when you make coffee in the morning and realize her mug's still on the shelf. When you hear a song she loved and instinctively want to send it to her. When you catch yourself checking your phone for a message that will never come. That was my life for the next few weeks. Pretending I was fine while slowly falling apart inside. And then came the night I finally saw the truth I couldn't deny. The night that changed everything. Started like any other, quiet, ordinary, forgettable. Until it wasn't. There are nights that stay with you. Nights that replay in your head, long after the world moves on. For me, that night began with a restless kind of quiet. The kind that hums under your skin, telling you something's about to happen, even before it does. It was a Thursday. Alina had said she'd be at a brand event, some late-night networking thing for her fashion line. She promised it wasn't anything big, just cocktails and business talk. I believed her, or at least I wanted to, but there was something about her tone on the phone that day, too rehearsed, too careful. The kind of careful that comes when someone's already walking on the edge of a lie. That evening, I tried to distract myself. I cooked dinner, poured a drink, turned on the TV. But nothing stuck. Every sound in the apartment felt too loud. Every silence too heavy. I looked at my phone more times than I want to admit. No messages. No updates. By 10 p.m., she still hadn't texted. I told myself she was busy. I even said it out loud, as if saying it made it truer. But then I opened her social media. A new story had just been posted, a short clip. A glass of wine, dim lighting, jazz music. The camera panned for half a second across a table, catching another hand in the frame. A man's hand, a watch I'd seen before. Raised. Something in me went still. I sat there, staring at the screen, replaying the clip over and over, each loop cutting deeper than the last. My brain tried to find excuses. Maybe it was coincidence, maybe it was business, but my gut knew better. It wasn't paranoia anymore. It was proof. 15 minutes later, I was in my car. I didn't plan it. I didn't even grab my jacket. I just drove, following that low, quiet instinct that had been whispering to me for weeks. The venue was only 20 minutes away, a small boutique restaurant downtown that hosted private events. As I got closer, the city lights blurred against the windshield, my reflection flickering between them. I wasn't angry yet. I wasn't anything, just numb. I parked across the street. The restaurant's entrance was glowing softly, golden lights spilling through the windows. From the outside, it looked like something out of a dream. Laughter, music, the clinking of glasses. I waited, watching through the glass like someone staring into another world. And then I saw her. She walked out from one of the side rooms, her hand brushing through her hair, that familiar gold dress, the same one she wore on her birthday. It felt deliberate, almost cruel, like she'd chosen it for the symmetry of the moment, even if she didn't know I was there to see it. She wasn't alone. Ray followed behind her, close enough that their arms touched. He said something. I couldn't hear what, and she laughed, that same laugh I used to chase like sunlight. He reached for her hand, and she didn't pull away. Time slowed. The noise of the city dulled into nothing. All I could hear was the quiet thud of my heartbeat in my ears. I didn't move. I didn't storm in or shout or demand an explanation. I just watched, the truth finally settling where denial had lived for too long. It wasn't the act itself that broke me. It was how natural it looked. The ease of it. The familiarity. Like this wasn't the first time. Like I had been the extra all along. They stepped outside, laughing softly, still unaware of me across the street. I watched them walk toward the valet, her hand resting on his arm, the way she used to hold mine. He said something that made her smile. She looked up at him, that same tilted head smile she once reserved for me, and for a moment, the whole world went silent. That was it. The confirmation. The final, undeniable proof. I didn't stay to see them drive away. I turned, walked back to my car, and sat there for a long time, staring at the steering wheel, trying to breathe. There's a moment after heartbreak where you go completely still inside, when pain turns into clarity. That's where I was. No shouting, no crying, no begging for explanations. Just silence. I realized, sitting there in that car, that I had already lost her long before that night. This was just the final scene in a story that had been ending for months. The truth had been there in the way she stopped reaching for my hand, the way she smiled at her phone instead of me, the way she kept talking about her future, like I wasn't part of it. I just hadn't wanted to see it. I drove home slow. No music, no lights, just the quiet hum of the road. When I got there, her things were still scattered around. Her hair tie on the counter, her slippers near the bed, a half-empty bottle of perfume on the dresser. Traces of her, haunting the space like ghosts that didn't know they died. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her side of it. I tried to feel angry, but I couldn't. All I felt was tired. Tired of trying. Tired of being the one holding it together. Tired of pretending love could be fixed if I just gave enough of myself. That night I didn't sleep. I just lay there, eyes open in the dark, listening to the clock tick, each second louder than the last. The next morning, she texted me. A casual message. Something about how late the event went, how exhausted she was. Not a single word about Ray. Not a trace of guilt. And that was when I knew I was done pretending. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because I realized something powerful in that moment. Silence can be sharper than any accusation. And sometimes, it's the quietest response that hurts the most. I decided I'd play my part a little longer. Calmly, patiently, because if she could lie so easily, I could learn to move on just as quietly. But before I left her behind for good, I wanted her to see what she'd lost. And that's where the real shift began. Not in anger, but in understanding that I didn't need to scream to walk away. I just needed to stop caring. That weekend we had plans. A dinner with friends, something she had arranged weeks ago. I still went, not to make a scene, but to end things on my terms, not hers. When I walked in that night, she greeted me like nothing had happened. Her smile was wide, her voice bright. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time I didn't see the woman I loved. I saw the woman who had taught me what love isn't. And as the night went on, as the laughter and music filled the room, I felt something inside me settle. A strange peace. Because when the truth finally comes out, it doesn't destroy you. Freeze you. I sat there, surrounded by noise, by people who didn't know the quiet war I was fighting inside, and I thought, this was the last time she'd ever get to make me feel small. When the night ended, I helped her with her coat, paid for everything one last time, and walked her to her car. She smiled, thanked me, leaned in to kiss my cheek. And as she did, I looked into her eyes and saw the reflection of every lie she'd ever told. That was the moment I decided how it would end. Not with confrontation or chaos, but with calm, deliberate silence. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge is to simply walk away without a sound. When you finally see someone for who they truly are, it doesn't come with fireworks. It comes quietly, like morning light slipping through blinds, soft, steady, undeniable. That morning after the dinner, I woke up different, not healed, not whole, just empty in a cleaner way, like the kind of emptiness that comes after cleaning out a room full of memories. The air feels lighter, even if the silence stings. Alina texted me around noon. She said she missed me, that she wanted to reset things between us. She even suggested spending the weekend together. Maybe a trip, just us two. Should have made me happy. It used to. But this time I just stared at the message, unreadable, detached. For the first time, I wasn't the man trying to fix everything. I was just watching her lies crumble under the weight of their own performance. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I went for a walk, something I hadn't done in months. The city was quiet that morning, wrapped in that slow calm before noon. The air smelled faintly of rain, and the streets glistened from an earlier drizzle. I walked without a destination. My head was full, but my heart was still. Every step felt like shedding something. Her laughter, her perfume, her hold over me. When I stopped for coffee, I realized I hadn't even brought my phone. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to check it. That's when I understood. I was done being her safety net. When I finally called her later that evening, her voice was warm, almost relieved. She said she'd been thinking about us, about how strong we used to be. She wanted to meet for dinner. Her idea, her invitation. I agreed. But not because I wanted her back. I wanted closure, my own version of it. One that didn't involve yelling, or begging, or asking why. I'd already seen enough. I just wanted to look her in the eye one last time and let her see that she no longer had power over me. We met at a small restaurant near her apartment, the kind of place we used to go to when things were still simple. The same table by the window, the same soft lighting, the same background music that used to make me believe in us. But this time, everything felt different. She was dressed beautifully, of course. Always put together, always careful with the details. She smiled when she saw me, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes. Confusion maybe, or guilt. I didn't give her much to read. My face was calm, my tone even. We talked about her work, her new opportunities, her projects. She talked a lot. I listened. She tried to touch my hand once, the way she used to, but I didn't move toward her. That small act, that simple absence of reaction, said more than any words could. There was a moment halfway through dinner when she looked at me, really looked, like she finally realized something had changed. The certainty she used to have, that I'd always be there no matter how she treated me, was gone. She asked if something was wrong. I told her no. I smiled and said everything was fine. But my silence said what my words didn't. She could feel it. The air between us had shifted. When the bill came, I paid for it without hesitation, as I always had. But this time, it wasn't an act of love. It was closure. A full stop. The final payment for a chapter that no longer deserved my effort. She reached for her purse to contribute. Maybe out of guilt, maybe pretense. But I stopped her with a calm shake of my head. She smiled weakly. I could tell she didn't understand what that moment meant. But I did. It meant I was done owing her anything. Not love, not anger, not explanation. After dinner, we walked out together. The night air was cool, brushing against us like the world was quietly applauding the ending of something overdue. She talked about seeing me again, about spending time together that weekend. I let her speak. I didn't interrupt. When we reached her car, she hugged me. Soft, hesitant, familiar. And for a split second, I could feel the ghost of what we used to be. But ghosts aren't real. They just linger because we let them. She whispered something. Maybe my name, maybe an apology. I didn't really hear it. I just stepped back, nodded once and said I'd call her. Then I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. That night, I went home and started clearing out her things. Every little reminder, the perfume, the toothbrush, the slippers, all of it. I didn't do it in anger. I did it quietly, methodically. Piece by piece, I dismantled the illusion that she still lived in my world. I packed her things into a box, sealed it and placed it by the door. Then I sat on the couch and stared at the empty spaces she used to fill. It hurt, of course it did. But underneath the hurt, there was something new, peace. The kind of peace that comes when you finally stop waiting for someone to love you the way you loved them. The next morning, she texted again. Just a simple message. Last night felt different. Are we okay? I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I typed back, we're fine. Take care, Alina. That was it. No paragraphs. No emotion. Just finality. She tried calling later that evening. I didn't answer. And over the next few days the calls kept coming, then fewer, then stopped entirely. That's how endings work. Not suddenly. Quietly. Weeks passed. I focused on work again. Started running in the mornings. Met friends I'd lost touch with. Every day, a little more of her faded from my mind. But occasionally, I'd see her posts online, new shoots, new dresses, the same practice smile. Ray was still there, always somewhere near her, in the background of every picture. I didn't feel jealousy anymore. Just a quiet, distant pity. Because I knew what he didn't. I knew how her affection fades. How it begins with fire, then flickers into convenience, and ends in silence. It wasn't my job to warn him. He'd learn soon enough. Months later, I ran into her by accident. A random Tuesday evening, grocery store aisle. She looked startled, caught off guard. I smiled, polite, distant. She looked at me like she was trying to read something she used to know by heart but had forgotten the language for. We talked briefly, small talk, meaningless. And in that brief moment, I realized how light I felt. There was no ache, no nostalgia. Just closure. Before we parted, she said she missed me. That she still thought about us sometimes. I nodded. And then, gently, I told her the truth. I said, some things are better left in the past because they teach us who we are when they break. She looked at me like she didn't understand. But she didn't need to. I wasn't saying it for her. I was saying it for me. When I walked out of that store, I didn't feel like the same man who once stood outside a restaurant watching his world fall apart. I felt like someone new, rebuilt, steady, no longer defined by someone else's betrayal. And that night, for the first time in months, I slept without waking up in the middle of the night thinking of her. Sometimes peace doesn't come from fixing things. Sometimes it comes from walking away, quietly, deliberately, and letting silence say everything you never could. They say time heals everything. I don't think that's true. Time doesn't heal. It just teaches you how to live with the scars. But if you're lucky, if you stay honest with yourself long enough, those scars stop aching. They just remind you where you've been and how far you've come. It's been almost a year since that night. The birthday dinner, the rooftop, the lies that fell apart under candlelight. A year since I watched the person I loved slip into someone else's orbit. And if I'm being honest, it took me almost all of that year to make peace with it. Not forgiveness, peace. There's a difference. Forgiveness is something you give to others. Peace is something you fight to give yourself. Looking back now, I can see every red flag clearly, all the things I chose not to notice. The way she'd talk about us only when things were easy. The way she'd let me carry the weight of everything, while she chased attention disguised as ambition. The way her affection came in waves, overwhelming when she needed something, absent when she didn't. I used to blame myself for that. I thought maybe I wasn't exciting enough, not spontaneous enough, not the kind of man who kept love interesting. But I've learned something since then. Love isn't supposed to be a performance. It's supposed to be quiet, consistent, honest. And when you're with the right person, you don't have to prove your worth. They see it, even in your silence. For months after it all ended, I kept replaying moments in my head, trying to find the exact point where everything went wrong. But I don't think there was one moment. It wasn't an explosion. It was erosion, slow, silent, inevitable. She wanted the world. I wanted peace. And you can't build something real when both of you are chasing different things. What I didn't realize back then was that I'd been giving her something she couldn't even recognize. Stability. To someone addicted to chaos, stability feels boring. To me, it was love. The months after our breakup were strange. I thought I'd feel free, but I just felt hollow. It wasn't until I started rebuilding my own routines that I began to feel whole again. I spent time alone, real time, not the kind where you distract yourself just to avoid thinking. I traveled alone, ate dinner alone, sat in cafes with no one across from me, no phone to fill the silence. At first, it felt uncomfortable, but eventually it started to feel peaceful. There's a strange kind of strength in being alone. Not lonely, but alone. When you learn to enjoy your own company, no one can ever take that peace away from you again. One evening, A few months ago, I found myself at that same rooftop restaurant. Not for her. For work, a client meeting. The same lights, the same skyline, the same faint hum of jazz. I hadn't been there since that night. When I stepped out onto the balcony, I felt something tighten in my chest. Memory, maybe. But instead of pain, I felt clarity. I looked over the railing, at the city lights shimmering below, and I remembered standing there once before, numb, broken, watching her laugh with another man. But this time, I wasn't the broken one. I was just a man who had learned that sometimes, the most painful goodbyes are the ones that teach you the most about who you are. People often ask me if I'd take her back, if she ever came around, full of apologies. The truth is, no. Not because I hate her, not because I want revenge, but because I've learned that not every person who enters your life is meant to stay. Some people come to teach you lessons that only pain can teach. She taught me that love without respect is just dependency. That giving without boundaries isn't generosity. It's self-neglect. And that silence, sometimes, is louder than any argument. I heard from a mutual friend that she and Ray didn't last long. Apparently, things fell apart after a few months. It didn't surprise me. She's the kind of person who falls in love with potential, not people. And when the excitement fades, she looks for her next spark. A year ago, hearing that might have given me some bitter satisfaction. Now, it just makes me grateful. Grateful that I got out when I did. Grateful that I stopped trying to love someone who didn't know what love actually was. These days, I'm different. Not colder, just quieter. More intentional with who I let in. More protective of my peace. I don't chase people anymore. If someone wants to be in my life, they'll show up. If they leave, I let them go. Because I've learned that real love doesn't need convincing. It doesn't need grand gestures or desperate pleas. It just shows up every day, even in silence. Sometimes I think back to that birthday night. The laughter, the lights, the way she looked at me across the table, pretending everything was perfect. And then I remember the moment I stepped outside, into the cold air, and saw the truth through the glass. That moment broke something in me, but it also built something stronger. Taught me to trust what I feel, to stop making excuses for people who show me their true selves. I used to think heartbreak was about losing someone, but it's not. Heartbreak is about finding yourself again, after giving too much of yourself away. The other night, I sat by the window of my apartment, city lights flickering in the distance, a glass of whiskey in my hand. I thought about how far I'd come, how that version of me from a year ago wouldn't even recognize the man I am now. And I realized something simple, something quiet. I don't regret loving her. Because even if it ended in betrayal, it started with hope. And hope, even when it breaks, reminds you that your heart is still capable of feeling. I just regret not loving myself enough sooner. Now, when I look at my life, it feels clean. No noise, no games, no walking on eggshells, just peace. And maybe that's the real gift heartbreak gives you. Not closure, not understanding, but peace. The kind that comes only after you've burned through everything false. Because when the ashes settle, you finally see who you really are. So if you asked me what I learned from it all, I'd say this. Love isn't proven by what you pay for or how much you sacrifice. It's proven by who stands beside you when there's nothing left to gain. And if they walk away, let them. Because one day, when the noise fades and the silence settles in, you'll realize something I did. Sometimes the best thing you can say is nothing at all. Because sometimes, silence is the loudest goodbye.